Hey y'all, today we're on the south end of Land Between the Lakes in Stewart County, Tennessee. Land Between the Lakes is a 170,000 acre recreational area in West Kentucky and Tennessee, located between two lakes. The Tennessee River passes through Kentucky Lake and the Cumberland River passes through Lake Barkley. This area was once home to many families and communities that were forced to move out in the late 60s due to the creation of the recreation area. What was once known as Between the Rivers is now known as Land Between the Lakes, or LBL for short. We're driving to an area that was formerly the community of Model, Tennessee, to see the home of Cleo Griffin. Cleo was known as the last remaining resident between the rivers. Cleo was born in this house October 14, 1923. He was the youngest child of Sanford and Martha Griffin. He grew up here with his sister Christine and his brother Thomas Reed. The Griffin's firstborn child, Vernon Lynn, only lived to be 2 years old. Cleo's father was a mail carrier in this community for over 30 years, and his mother was a homemaker. The Griffin's home was once a beautiful old farmhouse, and I'm sure a wonderful place to grow up. Cleo was a World War II Army veteran who sadly came home from the war shell-shocked, as they called it in those days. Today we call it post-traumatic stress disorder. Once home from the war, Cleo tried to get back to a normal civilian life and enrolled in college classes at Murray State on the GI Bill. Unfortunately, due to his severe PTSD, he was unable to finish college and came home to stay. His father passed away in 1949, and I'm sure his mother was glad to have him home to help out. But all of that changed around 1967 when the TVA made plans to turn the land into a national recreation area, and all of the residents were told they had to move. Over the years, countless TVA agents came up these steps, knocked on his door, and told him that he would have to leave, that this property no longer belonged to him. Each time Cleo would tell them no, and he refused to leave. Cleo didn't want to live anywhere else. This was his home that he had known his whole life, and he was not interested in leaving it. All of his family tried to convince him to leave as he was being told to do. They even bought him a nice brick house in Dover, Tennessee, near his sister. But each time they took him there, he would walk the 16 miles back to this home. This went on for years until finally the Veterans Affairs got involved and was able to convince the TVA to allow Cleo to stay in his home. Although he had electricity and a telephone, he had no running water, so his family would bring him jugs of clean water every week. They would also cook and bring him meals on the weekend. By this time, the town of Model was no more. The buildings had either been torn down or moved, so he was truly alone out here in these woods. But that seemed to suit him just fine. There are a lot of people who would like to see Cleo's home renovated and turned into a museum. Now let's go down the road a little further and visit the cemetery. Cleo remained in his home until 1989. 20 years after everyone else had left the area. Becoming too sick to care for himself any longer, he spent the last 10 years of his life away from his beloved home place. Cleo passed away on February 29th, 2000, and he's buried at the Hicks Cemetery just a few miles down the road from his home. The gravel road to the cemetery is in pretty good condition as far as LBL roads go. There are a few washouts on the hills, like for instance right here, but it's not terrible. A truck is always recommended, but I can get there just fine in my car. Cleo is buried next to his parents, Sanford and Martha. Martha passed away in 1971. This is the grave of his brother Vernon Lynn, who only lived to be 2 years old. On Cleo's headstone, there is a picture of the funeral procession stopping in front of his beloved house one last time.